The Gold Bug, a short story by Edgar Allan Poe. This story is about the narrator's adventures with his old friend William LeGrand, who lives in Sullivan Island in South Carolina. LeGrand is a man from a wealthy New Orleans family who lost his entire fortune and they decide to move to Sullivan Island. So the story begins when Legrand becomes obsessed with a gold bug that he found, to the point that he becomes ill and very crazy. So our narrator is going to visit him to see how he is, at the request of his friend and his companion Jupiter, who is his slave. And I know this is bad, but this is a very old story, so don't focus on that. So, uh, Jupiter is extremely concerned about how upset the old man is. And this is very strange for our narrator because he said that William can be described as a man that enjoys fishing, hunting. He likes to walk all over the beach, wander into unknown places, and look for new insects to study and collect. He said that he is a cultured, intelligent, and admirable person with a great sense of humor. So this is strange for him. While they were walking on the way to his friend's house, Jupiter tells our narrator how bad the old man is, and he just can't believe it. But when he heads home, he's stunned. The man looks very unhealthy and obsessed. He keeps talking about strange numbers and a riddle that he says that he can solve.
The narrator has an amazing conversation about the beetle that Legrand has discovered, without showing it to him because he gave it to a lieutenant. This didn't let Legrand hide its distinguished form, so he made a small drawing of how the beetle looked like. He described its texture as if that was gold. The narrator looks to draw his friend and he got noticed the beetle's wing had a skull shape. They spent time seeing this until the narrator asked Legrand about the beetle's antennae. In the drawing he didn't draw the antennae. So Legrand told him that the beetle's antennae are as clear as he has drawn them, but never getting noticed they seems not to be drawn. When the narrator affirms that he hadn't done them, the narrator returns his drawing and Legrand takes it. Annoyed, he can clearly see them and then he got ashamed. After a while, he relaxes and sits away from his friends, paying more attention to what he had drawn. While he was lost in his thoughts, the narrator decides to leave. And then, about a month after that last meeting, Jupiter went to the narrator's house, looking for him. The faithful servant were about the attitude and physical condition of his master William Legrand. He asked the narrator to come back to Legrand's house with him. Jupiter tells him everything that has happened since last time they met, the day the narrator left his old friend's house out of his own annoyance.
Until this moment he has been impatient, walking from one side to another, making numbers when strange figures. We have nothing else to say about the beetle. His physical appearance seems to be sick, exhausted, weak, but this doesn't stop him from fulfilling a mission that proposed and the which he includes the narrator, which is the why he sent Jupiter to look him. The narrator offered to carry some flashlights, and Grant only carried the beetle on the rope giving returns. During the way they saw each other at different ends of the place. It was beautiful as a child until they reached a big tree and Legrand sent his servant to climb the tree, but with the beetle at hand. Jupiter refused because he totally distrusted the golden beetle. Jupiter thought that if he had any contact with the beetle we would enter the same mental trance that his master had. He told him that he had no problem climbing the tree but to carry the beetle with him. With an annoying attitude, Legrand ordered him to do so, and that he would indicate to him how far he would come from the tree. After a long time, looking for the way to climb without difficulty and leafy and the grandiose tree, he climbed little by little, strongly, not touch even a slim touch with the beetle, arriving high on the first branch, questioning from the light head the indication that Legrand gave to Jupiter, and this he was ascending to the top of tree.
No longer noticed the body of Jupiter at the drop of the tree. From below Legrand suggests that he raised on more branch. Jupiter notices his arrival and Legrand begins to indicate what he will do next, ordering Jupiter to test the fringe of the branch with a knife. He was not as a firm inside. Although Jupiter refused to follow the instructions given by the protagonist, incenting to his servant to advance on the branch by offering him money. Immediately afterwards, they continue advancing fearfully on the branch and almost reaching the end. He comments that ahead of the school is nailed with a nail of the branch. He orders Jupiter to insert inside the left edge of the skull the beetle. Little by little, the servant went down the golden scarab diet to the drop. You could not see anything of the man at that height, but what was clearly observed was the brightness that dazzled that virtue with the last rays of the sunlight that they have. After which Legrand began the make of a key of the circle, a road where the virtue has held. The high order had to release the rope on the virtue field and Legrand drove it and stake into it. The with and measuring tape, he went from the skate to the tree. The servant descended from the tree and joined the other two men. They began to dig in the indicated place, limiting themselves on crossing words that were nothing more than to complain about the dog, that he breaked and noting the work that the three men were doing. It was already dark and they decided to turn on the flashlights to continue with their work.
They had already spent 2 hours complying with Legrand's calculations until the end of the excavation. Euphoric, he climbed over the hole and told his servant to begin to collect the tools. As soon as the narrator reserved to mediate any word, as he was exhausted and disappointed with everything that happened, while Jupiter finished picking up the tools, an annoyed Legrand cornered and questioned him, staring at him and asking if he was completely sure he knew which was the left eye. The poor servant pointed to the right eye instead, and Legrand let him go and regained energy to take other measures and start digging another hole. Through the night and part of the morning, they found a large chest. As soon as they opened it, amazed, surprised, and happy for all the work done, they celebrated, having found a good loot that turned out to be the treasure. It costed them a little to get it out of the hole, and they made 2 trips to get the treasure to the cabin,
but all the effort was well worth it. Taking us to a mysterious and extraordinary adventure, the last part of this tale explains each event and reaction of William Legrand, who, considered a hallucinating madman, turned out to be the discoverer of a great treasure. He explained in detail between numbers, punctuation, and addition marks. But the wonderful intelligence and wisdom of Legrand, how he managed to find the treasure, is explained by the series of events that occurred from the day the narrator went to his cabin until the day he sent Jupiter to look for him. How he was to find the clues that led to the treasure from the moment Legrand discovered that the paper he had drawn on the bug was a piece of parchment paper.
It is when he did his best to show any kind of indication, allowing him to be the beetle of the school symbol he wore, giving him the period meaning, making the narrator see that everything turned out to be from the beginning a wonderful coincidence. These two men having spent a day on hand of fall with Jupiter, classifying the type of vertically. Coins, precious stone that gadget possessed by the trader, making almost exact assumption, underestimating the value of all these beautiful treasures. Absolutely everything was golden. I explained to the narrator from the beginning how he found the beetle, the incident that occurred when he took it, and that's when it was thrown at him. Thanks to Jupiter who helped avoid touching with the beetle, I take from the ground a piece of paper that was a little buried, and it that way to tuck Lengran beetle of his back, weighed it up and heading it took him on his way to his cabin. He met the Literan and showed him the beetle. The Literan has him to show it off and see him in more detail. At this moment, it is when Lengran arrives at his cabin, and throughout the event, while searching for a piece of paper, I ended up taking the parchment and drawing up stuff in the bureau. Even he seated the narrator and he inadvertently brings in a little closer to the fire. Son Lengran realized that to edge of the paper and drawn it clear lines in what your friend returned of the paper to you. He was offended by the saying of his drawing as he was considered a good painter, then was astonished to see more closely the paper that was growing his euphoria, ideas and ended up recreating his mission to get that shit. They ended up studying about the owner of the world treasure and why he decided to bring him there. The narrator understood absolutely nothing of everything the protagonist said, until he gradually opened his understanding and realized that Lindgren wasn't as crazy as he thought, but that he was immersed in all this. Now, the present conundrum is what could be said about the skeleton found during the excavation. This wonderful died entity, the Golden Beetle, culminates.